Jim Conlon has mentored hundreds of staffing firm owners and has personally trained and developed thousands of industry recruiters and account managers around the globe to achieve triple-digit sales and production rates. He has personally grown 3 staffing firms of his own successful liquidity events. As creative director of Club VMSA, he is in daily contact with global procurement, contingent workforce management, and talent executives around the globe. Learn the steps to gain instant credibility and influence with client prospects. Master simple management techniques that will have you staff producing top levels and following your company's proven processes and practices. Jim, it is such a pleasure to be with you today. And with that, let's get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sheila. I'm going to clear my throat. I do that before every session. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending upon where you are. If you would right now either chat or put a Q&A in the window so Sheila can read it. I want to know, are you a recruiter or a manager, and why are you in this session? Just type that in, and I want to get some of that information. Now, this is about managing and leveraging recruiter and candidate relationships. And I want to start off by saying influencing people is not a bad thing. In fact, it can be a very powerful action for good. Leaders, you may not consider yourself a leader, maybe you are. Leaders influence. For example, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I didn't know the guy. I know I look old. He influenced people that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Remember that in your history book? JFK. I do remember him. I was in first grade when he was assassinated. I was a very young boy. JFK influenced the entire country to get behind the mission to send a man to the moon and safely return him to Earth before the decade is out. A bold statement. He influenced millions of people to get behind that. MLK, Martin Luther King. Some of you may remember him. He influenced people to see his dream and march for their rights. Steve Jobs, I did know Steve Jobs. He influenced people to put this thing in your pocket and make it yours. His phone. He influenced millions of people around the globe to put a phone in their pocket and use it for everything. Now, I've influenced thousands of candidates to accept new positions, hiring managers to see and hire my candidates, and I've influenced recruiters to make the next cold call to the candidate or client they didn't want to call. And since I started in recruiting business, managing people, which has been a little trepidation, 40 years, I started in 1979, I've realized that the number one thing that you can do that'll determine your success is your ability to influence people. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to take a few minutes and go over that. This is a business where your success is tied directly to your ability to influence. Now, that can sound intimidating. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to influence people. I'm not a salesperson. I don't want to manipulate people. Well, the truth is, I don't want you to manipulate people either. I want you to be a leader like the people I just mentioned a moment ago, right? And I want you to understand the very simple techniques of how to influence people. Now, first, I have to tell you what influencing is not. Influencing is not convincing, strong-arming, badgering, selling, deceiving. That's not influencing. Influencing is something very, very different. And the fact of the matter is, everybody on this call influences, but you're unconscious of it. Everybody influences other people to some degree or another, but you're unconscious of it. For example, excuse me, have you ever written a review on a product or a service, right? Like an Uber review, right? Have you ever done that? Or a Yelp. Is Yelp still around? I think Yelp's still. Have you ever written a Yelp review on a restaurant? What are you doing when you do that? You're attempting to influence people by giving them information that they either didn't already have, didn't know how to get, or didn't get the time to get. Don't have the time to get, right? So when you're giving information on like a review site, you're consciously or unconsciously attempting to influence other people based upon your view of the product. Now, this is what you do in your review, right? You're telling someone either go here or stay away. Excuse me. Now, the people that read your review are going to act on your information based upon the credibility that they believe you have as a reviewer. This is very important. I'm going to say that again. When people read your review, they're going to act upon the information you've given based upon their perceived credibility of your credibility. Now, if your review matches 90% of the other reviews, you're going to have a little bit more credibility than if your review is way off of everybody else's review. Let me go a little bit further on this idea of credibility and how it's tied to influencing people, because it's something that you can do to change, right? A lot of times I get questions from recruiters. How do I convince the candidate to take the job? How do I get the hiring manager to call me back? How do I get all this? It's not about what they do. It's about what you do that increases your credibility level, thus increasing your ability to influence. So let's talk a moment about credibility. And I want you to think of credibility as a continuum, a line. Okay. Think of a line, and at one end of the line is zero credibility. I have no credibility. People don't know me. They don't trust me. And at the other end of the line is 100% credibility. People will do whatever I say. I could tell them to jump off the bridge and they go, great, which bridge? Okay. Now, this is my PowerPoint. Every relationship you have and everybody that you come in contact can be charted along this line. Okay. In fact, you could draw that line and say, my wife, well, I have about 50% credibility with her. Okay. Sheila, maybe I have about 20% credibility with her. She's not sure, right? She's saying, no. So your goal is what is it that I can do to move from, I don't know you, I don't trust you, I don't know who you are, to I'll go on that interview. I'll look at your candidate. I'll hire your candidate without an interview because you say I should. What is it that I can do? Let's take a moment here. Hey, Sheila, are you still there? I just wanted to know if we had some feedback on who people are and what they came for.
Yes. Okay, let's jump into it. So we got a couple of responses here. It seems like we have a bit of a shy group, but please do keep them coming. So we have Vic Thomas, who is a recruiting and operations manager. Then we have Sheila Schaefer, who is a national account manager. I know, as the administrator of this event, I can't have people's names, but I know we have a couple business development representatives on the line as well, at least 4 of those. And then we have one more job title. We have a recruiter who prefers to be a vendor in a branded organization. So that's it. Do you want me to repeat those, Jim?
Great, that helps. So let's go back to this credibility continuum. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you very much. This credibility continuum. How do you move your relationships forward? See, everybody is plotting you on their subconscious line, right? If they don't know you and they don't trust you, you're here. Your goal is to move forward and gain credibility. And there's only 3 things that you can do to move your credibility. Like, for example, before we got on this call, I had 0 credibility. I might be had 1 or 2% because you read my profile. Maybe you looked at my LinkedIn profile, gave me a little bit of credibility. Have I moved the bar any? Have I gained any more credibility with you that I'm somebody, well, maybe I'll listen to him. Maybe he's got something to say, right? So what is it that I've done in the last 10 minutes we've been on the call that's moved my credibility? There's only 3 things you can do to move credibility with people. What you say, the words that come out of your mouth, what you do, the actions you take, and time. Okay. Now, let's get practical here. I know this is theoretical, so let's go a little deeper. First of all, I want to give you some background. In the 1930s, no, I wasn't born then. I wasn't alive then, but in the 1930s, the best book ever on influencing people was written. It's still the best book ever. I'm going to tell you what it is. I bet very few people have read it. It was written by a guy named Dale Carnegie. And the actual title is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And he gives very specific examples of how to influence people. The first thing, Sheila, is to use people's name. Isn't that something? Okay. Now, the main part of the book he outlines is how to get people to like you and trust you that don't know you, because that's a barrier to building credibility. Now, a little later in the 1970s, and yes, I was alive in the 1970s, the best-selling sales book that came out, and it's still one of the best ever, you can write this down, is How to Master the Art of Selling. Great title. It was written by a guy named Tom Hopkins. I met Tom Hopkins. I know Tom Hopkins. Tom Hopkins is great. He said, Jim, he's from Texas. Jim, he's in Arizona now. The number one thing I have to do to sell my product or service is have people like me and trust me. If they like me and trust me, I'm going to have credibility. Consistent message 40 years later, from 1930 to 1970. In the 1960s, I know I'm going back in history, but this is important stuff, you guys. There was a guy named L. Ron Hubbard. I know, you know who he is, right? He was a science fiction writer. He also developed the Scientology religion. Now, I have no opinion on religions or Scientology. It's like people can do what they want. That's great. But the book he wrote before he developed Scientology was called Dianetics. And in Dianetics, in that book, he described what I think is the perfect process for building credibility. And he had an acronym called ARC, A-R-C. The A is for affinity, the R is for relationship, and the C is for communication. A-R-C. And what he said in this book, which is brilliantly played out in every relationship I've ever had, is I have to have affinity first. We have to have a like, oh, you went to Notre Dame? So did I. Oh, you're a recruiter? So am I. Oh, you live in California? I have a cousin that lives in California. We have to have some point of affinity to begin to develop a relationship. This is true with candidates. This is true with clients. This is true with hiring managers. It's true with recruiters, employees, wives, husbands, girlfriends, boyfriends. We have to have affinity. Once we have a relationship going, then we can communicate. Then you're willing to receive information that I'm going to give you. And I'm willing to receive information, A-R-C. So your primary and first job when considering how to influence people is how to build affinity and likeness. So here's a practical tip. Practical tip number one. We can agree that every recruiter sounds alike, right? Candidates tell us this. Candidates tell us, you call up a candidate, hi, I got a job at, Google, are you interested? And they say, I get 100 calls from recruiters, you all sound alike. Candidates say, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for telemarketing. So if that perception is sitting in the subconscious of every candidate we call, how do we combat that? How do we not sound like everybody else? Okay. And this is where you must manage the words that you speak. Words have meaning. People are searching for meaning. Words have meaning. You must make your words have meaning, and they have to have meaning to the person you're trying to influence. I've heard thousands of recruiters, and here's how they sound when they call a candidate. I know I'm making a generalization. I know you may not sound like this, but here's how most of them sound. They dial a phone. A lot of them don't even dial the phone anymore. They just text or email, but it's the same thing. You're communicating a message. Hi, is this, and usually when a recruiter gets on a call with a candidate, they're panting. I don't know what that is, right? Hi, I found your background on LinkedIn, and I work for technology recruiters, and I have a client that has a job that you might be interested in, and they all sound like this, right? All recruiters sound like this, especially new ones. And the person on the other end of the call feels like they're getting bombarded. They don't know who the person is calling, even though they identified themselves. And then your manager, this is usually ineffective. Your manager tells you, you need to call more people, whether it's a call to a client, to a prospect, to a hiring manager you've never met. Poor messaging. Most recruiters or salespeople won't take the time to consider what their message is. Okay, consider what their message is. I want to get to questions here, and we're going to do a little role play if we can. So it's all about establishing affinity and considering how you're saying what's being received. So the most important thing in any first-time call with a stranger, remember, somebody who you have zero credibility with. When I call a new prospect, when I call into a company, when I call a candidate, they're a stranger to me and I'm a stranger to them. And I don't want to be a stranger. I want to be a known entity. I want to make them feel comfortable with me. I want to develop affinity and relationship. So here's how I do that. And I'm going to give all the credit to a guy named Peter Lefkowitz, one of the best recruiting trainers in the world. I don't know if he's training anymore, but he talks about a positioning statement. And I'm going to end with this. And I'm going to take questions. The positioning statement is vital to your success to influence people. Vital. The positioning statement positions you in the mind of your prospect. Your prospect can be a hiring manager, a candidate. Positions you in a way where you appear different than anybody else. Okay? And a positioning statement has a couple of things to it, a couple of components. Number one, it's disarming. Number two, it's comfortable. Number three, it's got to be rehearsed and practiced. So I'm going to give you an example. And I don't have anybody I can bring up on the call. Actually, if Sheila's still there, Sheila, are you there? Okay. Can you just play the role of a candidate? You don't need to even know what to do. Okay.
Yes, I'm ready.
And it's Sheila, right? Am I saying your name right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. I didn't forget. Okay.
I'm here.
We're going to imagine I'm calling you for a moment, okay? And I'm going to be the typical recruiter, okay? And you just respond like you normally would. Don't feel like you have to play a role. Just however you feel, whatever feeling comes up, I want you to do it, right? Ring, ring, answer the phone, and you say,
"Hello, this is Sheila."
Sheila, hi. My name's Jim Coughlin. I'm with Foundation Systems, and I found your resume on LinkedIn. And I work with a couple technology companies, and they're looking for marketing and salespeople. I wonder if you had a minute to talk.
Sure. Yeah, I can give you a minute.
You do? Okay. And are you willing to work contract? And what kind of money are you making? And what's your Social Security? And what's your date of birth? And what's your feeling? What's your feeling right now? Come out a roll.
Yes. All right. I don't think that I'm interested.
Right. Now, we're going to do it again with a positioning statement. You ready?
I'm ready.
Ring, ring.
Hello, this is Sheila.
Hi. Sheila, tell me your last name, Sheila.
Mulrooney.
Mulrooney, right. Okay, sorry again. Let's start again. Ring, ring.
Hello, this is Sheila.
Hi, is this Sheila Mulrooney?
This is she.
Sheila, this is Jim Coughlin. We haven't met, but your name came across my desk as somebody I should get to know. Do you have a moment I can tell you why I'm calling?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds fun.
I work with the top marketing and promotion specialists in technology companies in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the clients that I work with are always looking for new talent. And the candidates that I'm looking for, while many are employed, sometimes are open to considering new positions if it fits right. And I'm wondering if you had a little bit of time to talk about what you've done in your background to see if it might be of interest to clients that I work with in the future. Do you have time to go over that right now?
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Sure. Let me give you 5 minutes.
Great. Good. I'll take 5 minutes. So what is the most significant thing that you've done in your job currently that you're most proud of?
I hosted a webinar with Jim Conlon, who gave a great training session.
Wow, that was pretty impressive. Good. What was the most successful part of that? What did you like most about it?
I liked the part where I pretended to talk on a phone.
Good. Okay, good. Thank you, Sheila. Give Sheila a hand. So the point I did here is that my presentation, did I sound like the typical recruiter the second time? Not at all. What was the feeling you had, Sheila, when I made the second call?
Yeah, very good. I liked that you said what you did first, and then you talked to me about what I did. So that was really good.
Right. And typically, and I'll take questions from the audience because bless you, we're coming up toward, how much time do I have? Do we go to to 11
So I
o'clock
think
here?
we have about 10 more minutes of presentation, and then we'll do 10 more minutes of Q&A. So you've got a bit of time to play.
Okay, good. I got time to play. Good. The point I'm trying to make here is that most recruiters are going after what they want. They want to try to get the candidate to say yes to the job description. I don't talk about the job at first. I don't talk about my client at first. Now I'm going to get questions from the candidate. The one question I'm going to get is, how did you get my name? How'd you get my name? Because in my presentation, in my positioning statement, Sheila, your name came across my desk as somebody I should get to know. Can I explain who I am and why I'm calling? I work with the top conference companies across the US looking for people to do promotion and sales and marketing. And the clients that I work with are always looking for good talent. And the candidates that I represent are typically employed and not really open to looking for positions, but would like to know about them if they came up in the future. That takes the pressure off. They don't feel like I'm trying to sell them on a job. I've developed affinity because I'm working in their space, right? She's working in conference space and she's in the marketing promotion position. I'm working in their space. The only questions she's going to have for me are one of two. How did you get my name, or what's the job you're calling about? If she asks, how did you get my name? I say, I have, a team of researchers that are constantly scouring the industry to find the best talent. Do you happen to have your background up on LinkedIn or a job site? And they'll typically say, I do. And I go, well, that's probably how it came out. Have you been open to looking for an opportunity at the current time? I'm leading with questions. I'm not making statements. I'm leading with questions. The only other question they're going to ask me is, what's the job you're calling about? And my answer is very clear. Well, while I do have a number of active positions I'm currently working with, my clients ask that I don't disclose the name of their company until I have a fully vetted candidate that I'm ready to present. I have no problem telling you about the opportunities I've worked with in the past, some of the companies, but right now I really want to find out about you. What have you done? So now I'm going to get interest in the other person. I want to know about Sheila Mulrooney. I actually pulled up your background on LinkedIn. I'm looking at, but this really doesn't tell me the whole story, does it? Tell me about you. I want to get the candidate talking about themselves. Why? Because that's their favorite subject, themselves. Their favorite subject is what they're doing. Sheila is so excited. She's got this CPAL conference going on. She's moderating panelists. She's working in programs. I want to hear what she's excited about because that's what her greatest skills are going to be. And I want to hear her accomplishments. And then I'll probe a bit. I don't have to do the whole candidate assessment and qualification. But what I'm doing is I'm influencing the candidate. She's starting to perceive me as somebody different than a recruiter. Usually when I do these calls, almost all the time, when I do a candidate call, using a positioning statement and getting into a qualification of the candidate first before talking about any job opportunity, by the end of the call, the candidate says, I've always wanted to find a professional recruiter to work with. This is great. Even though they've gotten calls from thousands of other recruiters. So I want to qualify that candidate first before I even talk about opportunities. And I can do that in 5 minutes. Tell me about the thing that you've been proudest doing. Tell me about the one accomplishment that made the biggest impact into the company. Tell me about the team you're working in and how you interact and what you enjoy about that and what you don't. Is there anything in your current position that you would want to change, alter, modify to move your career forward? Have you ever considered looking outside your company? What was the reason for it? What did you do to implement that? Have you ever worked with a recruiter in the past? What was your experience about that? You need to have a list of questions prepared, not that you're going to ask them all, not that you're going to do an interrogation with the candidate, but that you can qualify and get this candidate experiencing what a professional recruiter works like. That is going to influence them. Now, the word influence is very interesting because there's fluence, like water. You're going to flow. It's got to be conversational. It's going to take practice and repetition. One of the things I've done over the years is trained recruiters and account managers and owners of staffing firms to develop systems and processes that are positive in influencing people, influencing candidates to consider opportunities, influencing hiring managers to consider candidates, influencing recruiters to do the work that they're supposed to do, influencing account managers to manage the account. I can't be everywhere at once, so what we did is we created a one-year training called Mastering the Art of Production, which is over 100 hours of training content on developing positioning statements, how to qualify for an interview, how to debrief for an interview. One of the last things on influencing candidates, typically if you don't develop a strong positioning statement right at the beginning and establish control with the candidate will only see you as a means to get the interview, and then they'll drop you like a fly. I can't tell you how many times a recruiter will get a candidate to an interview and then they don't hear from the candidate after the interview. The candidate's done with the interview and they don't get a call back from the candidate. And the candidate says something in the interview that the recruiter, the candidate was presented at $100 an hour pay rate and the candidate asked for $120. The candidate goes rogue on you. There are ways to control that. And it's how you influence the candidate, and it's how you build credibility with the candidate. It can't be answered in a 30-minute seminar. It takes time and practice to learn all of the aspects throughout the entire recruiting process where you can lose control with the candidate, lose control with the hiring manager, and you need to bring it back. So, Sheila, at this point, I'm going to take questions from the audience and any questions we have. Looks like we got about 20. Are there any questions in the queue?
We have many questions in the queue. So let's get started. Okay, great. So first question, what do we do if we don't gain credibility? So from the onset, your credibility is shot. So what's another technique or approach as you approach?
Okay, so that's a great question. So at the onset, my credibility is shot. The first question I would ask is, what did you do that shot it? Okay, so hold on a second, right? I would rather you not make the call than make it wrong. Now, it doesn't mean you don't make calls. You got to practice. But the first thing you need to do is prepare, okay? Do you think FDR, when he said, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself, just walked up and made that up and said that? Do you think Kennedy, when he said, we're going to send a man to the moon and bring him back before the decade is out, do you think he just walked up to the stage and said that? He wrote that out and rewrote it 100 times. Do you think Martin Luther King just went up and riffed? He didn't do that. He wrote that speech, that I Have a Dream speech, and it's beautiful. And he actually had to read it because it was so long. So the first thing you have to do is you have to consider every word that comes out of your mouth is going to either move the credibility one way or the other way. And it's really easy to lose credibility. Like, I forgot Sheila's last name. I lost a little credibility, and she nodded, right? You should know it's Mulrooney, right? So if you lose credibility, the thing you want to do is you want to learn from your mistake. Where did you lose it? What did you say that did that? Stop saying that, right? Stop doing that. So you need to analyze your communication. Let's go to the next question.
So this question has a lot of votes, but it's fairly simple. So how do we influence a hiring manager?
Right. So interesting. With a hiring manager, if it's a first call with a hiring manager, I almost approach them like a candidate. Okay. So if I'm trying to get a new client, let's say at Kaiser Permanente, here's Kaiser Permanente, right? Kaiser, their healthcare company. And I know there's an IT manager at Kaiser, and I got a phone number and I call him up and he says, hello, Bob Johnson. I go, is this Bob Johnson? I always reconfirm the name. He goes, yeah, who's this? I go, this is Jim Coughlin. We haven't met, but your name came across my desk as somebody I should get to know. You got a minute to take my call and I'll explain who I am. I want to sound like a friend of a friend. I don't want to sound like a salesman or a recruiter. I want to sound like somebody gave me your name and said we should get in contact. Okay, yeah, what's this about? Well, I work with the top IT managers in the healthcare industry in throughout California. And the clients that I work with are always looking for top IT talent. And the candidates that I work for, while are typically employed and very happy in their jobs, see, I'm assuming he is, would be interested and open to hearing about opportunities they may not know of, may not be aware of, may not have the time to get. Is this a good time to talk about what you do? He'll go, sure. And I'm going to start talking to Bob, the hiring manager, as if he's a candidate. Now, if he's totally, I'm totally happy. I got a team of 25 people here. I go, oh, you ever work with contract companies? Do you ever bring in contractors? What kind of projects do you work with? When was the last time you brought in a contractor? How big's your team? You don't need to give me the names, Bob, but the lowest performing person on your team, what skill set would you want them to have that they don't? Oh, right. I'm qualifying. So in this funnel of prospecting, which is what you're doing and influencing, I'm still positioning myself in Bob's mind as the guy that he wants to stay connected with, as somebody who's connected to his industry, right? And because everybody in their life cycle of employment is either going to be a candidate, a contractor working for me, or they'll become a hiring manager. And sometimes the hiring managers leave their job and then they become a candidate again. So you use the same techniques to influence a hiring manager. You still develop a positioning statement. You still want to approach them like a candidate because they're a person that may make a change. They're no different. And you can still qualify them. Tell me about your team. Tell me about the projects you've been working on the last 18 months. What have made the most impact to the company? How big is the team? What technologies have you been working with? What new technologies have you personally learned or new team members brought in? And these questions, I know it looks like they're coming off the top of my head, and they are. You have to write them down and have them be ready. And people get shivers when I say this. You have to have scripts. You have to memorize the lines. The best actors are good at memorizing lines. They know how to read lines, work lines, and say them with feeling so that they sound like they have meaning. Next question. Let's not go too long on that.
Okay, great. So would it be fair to say that a positioning statement is a form of social selling, i.e. establishing a relationship before a sell? Is that a good way of thinking about it?
Sure. I mean, that's fine. You could say that. Yeah, it's not a question. It's a statement. That's a fine statement. The point is your positioning statement is the first thing that comes out of your mouth. Some people call it an elevator pitch, 2-minute pitch. It's how you're presenting yourself and how you're wanting the other person to receive you. How serious you are about your role. Okay? Yeah. Next question.
Okay. Jim, I know you own Club VMSA. Here's a question. How would a staffing company present itself when the program managers at various MSPs say they are not adding vendors right now?
Right. So first of all, I'm not the owner of Club VMSA.
Okay.
I'm not the owner. Yet your question, how does a staffing firm present itself to a program manager when they say they're not adding? So great. So you know what's in the mind of the program manager before you call them. Stay with me on this. So you know when you call the program manager, you're going to say, we're not adding right now. So lead with that. So for example, what I would do in this market, and I'll go into this more in my next session, which is the third breakout on developing the trusted advisor relationship. I have another session today. What I would do is I would lead with that. So if Sheila Mulrooney here is the program manager, I'm going to call her up and say, hi, is this Sheila Mulrooney? Hi, Sheila. This is Jim Coughlin. I'm with Club VMSA. I know you're the program manager on Kaiser, and I know you're not adding suppliers at this point. So that means we can talk casually for a moment. You won't feel any pressure to add me, and I don't feel any pressure to convince you to use this as a staffing firm. I wanted to give you some information that I'm finding out in the marketplace about other programs in the healthcare field that you might have interest in, what they're doing when managing their programs, managing their suppliers, what new technologies they're bringing in. Is this a good time to share that information, or should we schedule another time to talk? So now I've established myself as a resource to other programs, a person that they can tap on as a trusted advisor. The pressure's off that I'm trying to get on the account. And what will happen over time is they'll probably put me on the account because they see me as more value than their lowest performing supplier. But I don't want to go in trying to overcome this. We're not adding suppliers, but I think you should. We're not adding suppliers, but I think you should. I'll just agree with it. I realize you're not adding suppliers. I think that's great. That means we can talk, casually and without any pressure of having to do business. I want to get to know you. Okay. Next question.
Great. Okay. This question has a lot of votes. What do you do if the manager asks you, who asked you to contact me? What do you do when you get that as a response?
So your name came across my desk as somebody else you get to talk to. Who asked you to contact me? I don't know. I can find out. Is it important? I get handed a lot of scraps of paper with names and numbers that people say, you should contact this person. And the reason I'm contacting you is I work with the top IT professionals in the healthcare field to find the best talent. Are you in that area? That's why I contacted you. So the name isn't important. At that point, I don't get that feedback, right? Because the affinity is I'm in their industry, I'm at their level, I'm recruiting them, people like them, people for them. So I've positioned myself as somebody that they should get to know. Okay. Next question. So you talked about how we should talk with candidates in a unique way. Can you just expand on how we could talk to our recruiters in a unique way? Great. I love it. Recruiters that are on the call, don't take this wrong. I've been a recruiter all my life. I was born with I came out with a little phone, little baby phone, right? And recruiters are lazy. It's just my opinion. Recruiters are lazy. They want to make the most amount of money, the most amount of placements with the least amount of work. They want to take one candidate, submit them, have that candidate go to an interview and hire and not do any else. But the fact is it doesn't work that way. You got to do a lot of at-bats, a lot of swings, a lot of misses. So to motivate recruiters and to talk to recruiters, you have to understand what the recruiter wants. The recruiter wants the easiest possible path to a placement. So if I can talk to the recruiter and say, Sheila, I get a sense that this business is kind of hard. It's struggling. It's a kind of hard time with candidates getting the submissions. I have an idea that would make the job easier for you. Would you be interested in hearing that? She's going to say yes. Nobody's going to say no to that. So it's how you phrase the question. Would you like an easier way to do this? Given that my assumption is recruiters are basically lazy, they want an easy way. Yeah, I'd love an easy way. I'm going to recommend you don't make any calls for the next 3 days. Don't get on the phone. I want you to take 3 days. Now, you're not taking that time off. What you're going to do is you're going to work with me, and every hour, every half hour, every 15 minutes, you're going to check in. We're going to write a positioning statement, and you're going to say it to me 100 times. So you only have to say this one thing 100 times. It's like, did anybody ever see the movie A Few Good Men with Jack Nicholson and what's his name? Tom Cruise, right? And Jack Nicholson in the end, you don't know what we're about. We're on that wall. We're protecting that wall. His line at the end of the movie, his soliloquy is perfect. And Jack Nicholson practiced that soliloquy before they did the final recording over 100 times to get the exact emotion, the exact words, the exact phrasing. So I would motivate these recruiters by saying, I'm going to make your job easier. But to do that, you're going to have to learn a skill, but I'm going to make that skill easy. That way, we'll try this. And if it doesn't work, you don't have to do it again. And if I can't help, then you shouldn't work for me, right? If I can't help you be a great recruiter, you shouldn't work for me. You should go work for somebody that can make you be a great recruiter. But I'm going to make your job as easy as possible because that's how I want to have it work for me. Okay, next question.
Okay, great. So this is our last question. We've got to wrap up. We only have 4 minutes. So the last question is, once a candidate is well into the process and they've had multiple meetings with the manager, and then all of a sudden the manager stops communicating, what do you do then?
Yeah, so that's going to happen. The technique, the actual term for the technique is closing the door ahead of time, meaning the door got shut on you. The manager was all go, 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 and then they stopped calling you. So that's going to happen. You need to address that way before it happens, 2 or 3 steps before. So for example, let's say you're the manager, Sheila, and you're all excited about seeing my candidate, Janine. Yeah, I really want to see Janine. Okay, good. Sheila, I'm going to schedule Janine to meet with you. Now, let me just say a few things. Managers get excited about candidates after they interview, and they kind of forget to come back to the recruiter. I can add value to the process because Janine will tell me things about the job she may not share with you. I want to give you insight about her feedback, insight about her referrals. And it's important as we get closer to you deciding on the candidate or not, that we stay in tighter communication, not less communication. Can we agree to that?
Yeah.
Good, we can agree to that. So therefore, I want to know that we have an agreement. If I reach out to you in an email, what is the expectation that I should have for when you'll respond to my email? What is the expectation that I should have to respond to my voicemail if I leave you a voicemail? Okay. Because my expectation is that we talk. If I call you, I'll get a call back in an hour, 2 hours at the most. If I text you, I'll get a text back in 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most. Text is pretty quick. And I get a text relationship with the hiring manager, because the candidate may move fast. The candidate may get another opportunity that's competitive to yours. So I want to get these agreements I'm building credibility. And with credibility, then I can get stronger agreements with people of how we're going to work together. This is how we're going to work together. And if we can't agree on that, I want to withhold sending the candidate out. I can't send the candidate out unless I have agreements of when we're going to follow up. So the candidate's going to interview at 10:25. Great. You usually spend 30 minutes interviewing a candidate. Let's you and I schedule a call right now at 11:05. That'll give you time to debrief, and we'll talk about it right then, right after, while it's fresh. And you go, well, I don't know if I can do that. Well, let's talk about that. Why not? This is your most important hire. Hopefully that helps. I know we're running up on the top of the hour. Sheila, awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, if you want more information, clubvmsa.com. Jim Coughlin, clubvmsa.com, clubvmsa.com, Jim@vmsexcel.com, mastering the art of production. That's what it's all about. Thanks, Sheila.
Jim, thank you so much. A great session. Everyone, thank you for attending, and thank you for coming to CPAL Connect. See you later, everyone. See you later, everyone.